All right, post-game pod time. And I thought that yesterday was pain that we would not get over for quite a while. Oh, I guess if you're a White Sox fan, you experience pain, you suffer through it, and then you end up just experiencing it over and over again. But as bad as it was for the White Sox to lose on a walk-off when your veteran so-called closer walks three straight guys and walks in the winning run, if you thought that was bad, I think the way that things unfolded tonight at Progressive Field in Cleveland might have been worse. And it wasn't because of the fact that the White Sox got walked off on, but more so because the White Sox lost in a way that can only be described as the White Soxiest loss that you can imagine. And if you're listening to this podcast, it means that, or watching it, I should say, and remember, like and subscribe to the YouTube page, and also make sure that you subscribe in all of the various podcast platforms. But if you're watching or listening to this, then that means that you have Twitter, or for some reason you're on my Instagram stories, which is also where I publish the show. But regardless of publicizing myself in that phase, if you're watching or listening to this, then you've been on the social medias and you know exactly what happened tonight. And all I can say is that it just goes into the notion that the White Sox don't identify injuries properly. Because there were instances in the game, and Mike Tauchman started the season on the DL, or IL, with hamstring issues. And it was pretty clear throughout the night that he was having trouble running. There was a situation on an Austin Slater double where Tauchman probably could have scored, but he didn't end up scoring because of the fact that he was just that hobbled in terms of what he was trying to do in terms of just getting around the bases. And you look back in that top of the fifth inning, and maybe that ends up making a difference in the game. But the White Sox did a good job against one of the game's best closers in Emmanuel Clase of stringing together a rally. Jacob Amaya, he's been highly criticized, to his credit, starts the inning with a single. Then Mike Tauchman singles, and Amaya gets up to second. We got to talk about Luis Robert Jr. because he has been downright bad. He has been performing like a guy who wants to get out of town. And I don't know if Luis Robert Jr. wants to be here or not, but I think one of the issues that you're running into with Luis Robert Jr. is he doesn't seem like he has the kind of motivation at this point to where he wants to play as hard as he can. And I'm sure that he wants to win and he wants to play well, but I mean, the guy's hitting 154 at this point. He went 0 for 5 out of the leadoff spot. To me, if you're the guy that has been praised as the best talent on this team and is most likely to be traded to a contending team, you've got to be better. Simply that. You're healthy, you got to be better. But the situation unfolds tonight where Robert strikes out. So you've got 2 on with 1 out, and Andrew Vaughn draws a walk. Now, Andrew Vaughn, he had a good night despite not getting a hit. He walks 3 times in 5 plate appearances. So despite the fact that both of his technical at-bats he struck out, so he didn't put the ball in play, but he did end up scoring a run in the first inning, and that's what we'll say about Andrew Vaughn there. But it's not relevant to the situation. So Austin Slater, because of the fact that there were other substitutions that were made, he's in a right-on-right situation. And as much as I've said that I want Austin Slater to play more right-on-right, the starter tonight, Logan Allen, for Cleveland, is a left-hander. And that's why Slater got the start, and that's why he ended up in the 3-hole. So he strikes out in a right-on-right situation. So that brings up 2 out, bases loaded for Miguel Vargas. who puts a ball through the hole in the left side for a hit. It ends up scoring Jacob Amaya. Whether or not Tauchman pulls up lame, I don't think he scores even if he's running at full health. And it wasn't like he wasn't running at full speed. But the ball was shallow enough in the outfield to where I personally felt like Stephen Kwan is a really solid outfielder. I felt like he would have been thrown out at the plate anyway. But Tauchman rounds third. The hamstring creeps up on him. He's about maybe 10 feet past third base. He pulls up lame, and he can't even make a competitive play at the plate. He ends up getting tagged out up the baseline. White Sox lose 3-2. Tying run gets thrown at the plate because somebody who had already been injured seemingly earlier ends up getting hurt even more significantly as he's rounding the bases, and that's the way the game ends. And it's certainly painful to see the White Sox lose on a play like that. I don't know, given the fact that to that point in the game, you had only scored one run, and again, this offense continues to have significant issues. And we'll talk about the injuries in our second segment of the show. And it's too early at this point to be having this many injuries. But do you run the risk of going to the next batter, who is Lenyn Sosa, who had an RBI single in the first inning? Do you run the risk of seeing what Sosa can do, or do you take the chance and send Tauchman to try and tie the game right there? I don't know what the right answer is. I think that if you had seen the ball a little bit further back in left field, Kwan was shallow when he got the ball. When you send a runner there, just looking at the replay the couple of times that I've looked at it, you're effectively, when you send the runner from second there, you're effectively trying to get the left fielder to have some pressure on him when he makes that throw. And Stephen Kwan is a good outfielder. That shallow, he's going to make that throw every time. And I still believe after watching the replay that Tauchman was probably going to be out at home anyway. It just makes it feel that much worse that there wasn't even a play at the plate because of the fact that he pulled a hamstring as he was running around third base. I wasn't initially planning on doing a post-game show tonight, and it's not going to be a long one, but I felt like there's so much to be encouraged by in certain situations regarding this team, but there's also so much that feels exactly what the last 2 years have been like. And tonight was probably, in terms of how bad can you lose a game given a certain situation, this was about as bad as it gets. And I hope Mike Tauchman is okay, but it certainly seems like he might be headed for another IL stint if the hamstring pull is as bad as it was. And also, I'm here to say Mike Tauchman's got to be hitting higher in the lineup. He went 3 for 4 today. He had as many hits as the entire Guardians team. The Guardians end up winning this game because Sean Burke was not good again. Sean Burke had a great opening start. His last 2 starts, he has been suboptimal. His command issues were significant today. 3 innings, 3 hits, 3 runs, all earned, 4 walks, 4 strikeouts. First inning issues consecutive walks to start the game. Yoensky Noel ends up singling home a run, and Jose Ramirez ends up scoring on a wild pitch. So in the first inning, 2-run score on a single and a wild pitch with both of those runs that reaching base on walks. Again, walks coming back to kill you. The last 3 runs, or 3 of the 4 runs that have been scored by the Guardians in this series, have come on walks. And then Carlos Santana, oye, como va? He has killed the White Sox throughout his career. He homers in the third to make it 3-1. And that's the score that it remains until we get to the 9th inning. Give the White Sox bullpen a lot of credit tonight. Mike Vassell comes in, 3 hitless innings. He was awesome, eating innings and keeping the White Sox in the game. Penn Murphy looks like he's gotten back on his grind. He pitches a scoreless inning, and Frazier Ellard ends up with a scoreless inning as well. And Logan Allen was not great tonight for the Guardians. He doesn't complete 5 innings. The win ends up going to Paul Sewald, but Stephen Vogt continues to do what Stephen Vogt does and manages his way to a close victory. So the White Sox end up losing again, their 7th in a row. They're 0-5 on this road trip, and they have struggled mightily in one-run games. I'm going to see if I can do the quick math in my head here and see what their record is in one-run games. It's got to be 0-4 at this point, or so it would feel. So they've lost 3 straight one-run games. And then going back to March, I can get my app to go back a little bit further. They lost both of the games in the Angels series that they lost were one-run games. Going 0-5 in one-run games, 11 games into the season, is the mark of a bad team. The fact that you can be involved in that many one-run games already and not have won a single one of them is a sign that when push comes to shove, when the rubber meets the road, you don't have that extra something that's going to put you over the top. Nobody said that this White Sox team was going to have any sort of modicum of success in the grand scheme of things compared to the other 29 teams across Major League Baseball. The discouraging part about what this team is at this point is that you're in most of these games, with the exception of Game 2 against the Tigers. And I'd probably say Game 1 against the Tigers. You've been in pretty much every single game. The fact that you are in so many games, in so many close games, and can't win any of them is a sign that your team has to refocus itself and try and evaluate what they can be doing around the margins in order to end up on the right side of those as opposed to the wrong side of those. We look back 20 years ago, the 05 White Sox were elite in one-run games. The 2025 White Sox, one-run games are their ultimate kryptonite. And you look at a team that's 2-9, they could be a whole lot better than they are if they could just find a way to improve slightly around the margins. So some other news and notes to get you caught up on. Corey Lee left the game as well this evening with ankle soreness. We'll see what that ends up leading to, but to me, it's unfortunately a sign that if he ends up going on the IL, I don't know how much more of him you're going to see before they eventually bring up Kyle Teal. And it unfortunately means you're going to see way more Matt Theis than you actually wanted to, and I feel like we're going to end up running the gamut on talking about Matt Theis, but to me, it's just an unfortunate situation to where you're not going to end up being in a position to where you are going to give the guy that you want to get the majority of the at-bats the best chance to actually do that. And I'm hurt for Corey Lee. I hope that he finds a way to actually get the lion's share of at-bats once he's finally healthy and give him that last best opportunity to establish himself as part of this roster for the future. But it just looks less and less like that's going to happen. And, I don't know where he goes from here. But I still want to see more of him. And hopefully this injury isn't significant enough to the point where he has to go on the injured list. But just knowing the way the White Sox operate, they were going to start Matt Theis tomorrow anyway because it's a day game after a night game. And that's just how things go when you're talking about catchers. And we'll see if the White Sox end up making a move on him tomorrow in order to get another healthy body on the roster. So it was worth noting, by the way, that the White Sox have not opened up another, or rather have not closed off a 40-man roster spot after they DFA'd Travis Jankowski. They ended up re-signing him to a minor league contract, so he is off the 40-man roster, but he's still in the organization. So there is an open spot on the 40-man roster should the White Sox elect to make a move. The White Sox did make a move. Andrew Benintendi, unfortunately, his adductor strain is going to put him on the IL, and the White Sox are bringing up Greg Jones, former Colorado Rocky, to fill his spot in the outfield. Jones had a very meh start at AAA Charlotte. In 8 games, he's hitting .138 with 1 homer and 5 runs driven in. Last year in Albuquerque, across 86 games with the AAA affiliate of the Rockies, he ends up hitting .269 with 16 homers and 42 runs driven in. Greg Jones has not exactly had a great career across the minor leagues. He's been good enough. Former Tampa Bay Ray farmhand. So we'll see if he has any impact at all at the big league level. My guess is that he's not going to play unless he has to. But you may also end up seeing another roster spot open up if Mike Tauchman has to go back on the IL, which could very well mean that Travis Jankowski is right back up on the big league roster. Again, though, it's cycling through guys that are not going to have a big impact on this team moving forward. So tomorrow's a day game. You're going to end up seeing Jonathan Cannon get the start for the White Sox and then back home to face the Boston Red Sox starting on Friday. I'm going to try and get out to the yard on Friday. Hopefully, White Sox can snap this losing streak tomorrow, but I don't know what to feel at this point with this team this early in the year. It's so discouraging. And I actually went back and I looked it up real quick as I was multitasking. The White Sox are one of 9 teams at this point in the year, and we're recording this before some of the games in the West Coast are done, but they're one of 9 teams that has already played at least 5 one-run games. They're the only one of those 9 that hasn't won a single one of them. So there you have it. That's the difference between the good and the bad. And where the White Sox are right now is the bad, the very bad. And I don't know how it gets better, but the positives from this game are you're working the count, your bullpen picked you up, and at least Miguel Vargas came up with a clutch hit. He got the ball in play, and he gave the White Sox a chance. But just the weirdest, strangest of circumstances is the reason why you ended up not tying the game. And I don't know how else to put it other than this is just stuff that seems like it only happens to the White Sox. That's all you can really say. Pain and White Sox baseball are one and the same. I wish it wasn't the case, but that's the status quo until we see otherwise. That's it. That's all. Might do a pod tomorrow. Not sure about it yet. Was not going to do one today, but after that ending, kind of felt like we had to. Thanks, everybody. Talk soon. Sox lose 3-2 in the strangest of ways in Cleveland.